To give us a perspective from within the IEC about voting abroad that has taken place between yesterday and today is the IEC Deputy CEO, Masego Sheburi. Masego, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. As you track processes and voting turnout in the various missions across the world, are things going according to plan, just how you guys had hoped, or have there been a few hiccups, and how have you overcome those?
First, let's express our appreciation to the voters who've turned up to voting station to vote. Also thank the Department of International Relations and Corporations for availing their facilities and their staff member who are indeed the backbone of this election. Similarly, we thank the Department of Home Affairs who have assisted South Africans abroad with identification documents. All our stations opened across the world in 111 missions, and the reports that we are getting is that there have been a steady stream of voters into those voting stations, and in those voting stations at which we have high number of registered voters, there have been queues that have formed, but those queues are being processed because we had planned for those, because we anticipated the queues, and we have made improvements in those voting stations so that people's experience is different from past elections.
I would imagine that the Trafalgar Square voting station has been the one with the biggest logistical planning that you've had to put into that. Can you give us a sense about how that went administratively? Not only the biggest voting station outside of the country, but it's also, if you were to compare it, the biggest voting station, period.
Indeed, it is the biggest voting station, period. First thing we had to do there was to ask for approval from the Westminster Council to close roads, because the facility itself cannot facilitate queuing by those number of people. There's just over 24,000 people who we must process within 2 days. So today we have full approval for road closures, and that are facilitating the flow of queues. We have trained in excess of 45 people who are at those stations, and we have transferred some of our skilled staff here to go assist at that voting station. Just to give you a flavor of the operations there, we have 22 points at which we issue ballots. We have 10 points at which we check people on the voters' roll. We have 12 points at which we assist people to complete the envelope that Sherwin spoke about, that contain the details of voters. So we have made every use of the square inch in that facility without putting at risk the secrecy of the votes for those South Africans that are voting there.
When can those ballots be expected to be shipped and transported back to South Africa?
The London mission is authorized to run special votes today, the 18th, and tomorrow, the 19th. All other missions will close tonight at 7, except the mission in Washington, D.C. and New York that will close at 2100 hours. We expect to start rolling back the material back to the country as early as Monday to enable the verification in country and to enable the counting of those ballots after the close of the voting stations in the country on the 29th.
What other support services were needed for voting to run smooth? So you mentioned there the support of Home Affairs and the support of DIRCO. What other agencies play a part in that value chain that makes international or global voting possible?
Typically, we are in liaison with political parties who assist us to communicate messages to people who have networks with overseas, so that people know when to vote, to anticipate what it is that will be required of them on voting day. We also, in other missions, for example, in The Hague, we have had to put up tents because our facility there is not adequate to assist us to deal with those numbers. But critically, the departments at the heart of delivering an election, it's ourselves, it's the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and it's the Department of Home Affairs as it relates to identity documents for those South Africans abroad. But more importantly, an election is about people. The people are the ones that make the election.
Masego Sheburi, thank you so much for your time and your take on this and your input. Really do appreciate it. Of course, we will continue to track voting as it takes place at the various missions across the world.